How'd you go? Did you view our models training results with TensorBoard from a Google Colab notebook? I hope you gave it a shot. Otherwise, let's check it out how we can do it. So I'm going to create a new section here called number 5, view our models results with TensorBoard. So previously we had the results dictionary, and if we had a look at this, results, we could plot the loss curves of that. But as we've been talking about, the whole purpose of experiment tracking is to track experiments programmatically. So let's see how we could do that with TensorBoard. There are a few different ways. One is to view it from right within the TensorBoard notebook, or if you go into PyTorch experiment tracking, and then if we go to view our models results in TensorBoard, there's another way to do it using VS Code. So you can set it up there. I've got a resource for you there. But since we're using a Jupyter and Colab notebook, or Colab that is, we can view it directly from within our notebook. The third way is you can also upload your experiments to tensorboard.dev and reproduce what's in the notebook in a public way. So a few options there. I'm going to leave them there as extracurricular. We're going to focus on viewing it from within a notebook. So to do so, let's view our experiments from within the notebook. And what I might do is, before I forget, I'll just link this here. There are a few ways to view TensorBoard results. See them here. I'm just going to link this section here so that you can reference something. Beautiful. So we're going to use the magic here, load extension in Colab. Now, this requires TensorBoard to be installed. If you don't have TensorBoard, if you're running this locally, you might have to install TensorBoard. And how can you figure out how to do that? So how to install TensorBoard? How do I install TensorFlow's TensorBoard on PyPy? There we go. However, Google Colab already has TensorBoard installed, so we don't need to install that. That's one of the benefits of using Google Colab. And then we're going to go TensorBoard. So we're loading the extension here. And then TensorBoard, we're going to use this parameter here. The log directory that we want to view is runs. So by default, we saw that PyTorch's summary writer, if we look in here, summary writer, saves to a folder called runs, and we haven't changed that. So we're just going to keep that as runs. Yeah, logdir by default is runs and then something, 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 current, date, time, host name. So that's all we're going to do. Now you ready? The magic of TensorBoard. Let's see if it worked. Launching TensorBoard, it may take a minute or so because, as you'll see, TensorBoard is quite the visualization tool. I'm just going to give us some more space. Here we go. So that took a few seconds. Oh, look at that. How beautiful is that? It's so interactive already. And we've even got do we have a dark mode? We have a dark mode. How cool is that? Browser default. I'm just going to leave that like that. And you might notice this refresh button. This means that TensorBoard can be updated. So say our model was training for quite a long time. You can update TensorBoard live in the browser every 30 seconds or so, or just by clicking this. Now, there's a fair bit going on, and the best way to figure it out is to explore it. So I'm going to encourage you to explore most of this on your own, but let's look at a few things such as what we just tracked. So I'm in the Scalars tab here, which is where this came from up here. Writer.add scalars. So this is, we're viewing the scalars that we tracked. I like to turn smoothing off. What it does is it just makes these lines a bit smoother, but I like to just put it all the way down to 0 because that's going to give us just the raw numbers instead of like averaging them out or something like that. You can play around with this. So we've got over here a bunch of our different runs. So let's focus on just viewing the test data. So we've got June 27, that's the date that I'm running this. So I want to keep loss, test loss. I want to keep that there. Train loss, I want to get rid of that. You might notice, look, see, train loss goes away. And then accuracy, train accuracy, I want to get rid of that. I want to get rid of the train loss. I want to keep the test accuracy. Beautiful. So this is our test data set. Now we can press Alt and scroll out, in and out here. oh my goodness, it goes quite up and then quite down. So that's the benefit of smoothing. If we smooth this out, what does this look like? Yeah, that's what happens with smoothing. And the same with the loss. That looks like it's going down and it's going up. Now let's bring the train back in. Loss, train loss, and accuracy, train ac. So if we zoom out, so it looks like our test accuracy is quite a bit higher than our train loss at the end. And then if we go down here, and if we zoom out a little bit by holding Alt and zoom out, this button doesn't work too well for me all the time because I think the browser's a bit too zoomed in. But there we go. It takes a bit of a fiddling around to get your optimum view. But we see here, the loss curves are slowly, I mean, if we kept going, they're heading in the right direction. It looks like here that the test loss kind of goes up towards the end, so that might hint at overfitting. So recall that overfitting is when the training loss is lower than the test loss. That's over here in section 4. We can look at the loss curves. I believe it is section 4, maybe section 8. So if we go down here, what should an ideal loss curve look like? Yeah, there we go. Looks like towards the end, our model is starting to overfit. So a few things that we could try out there, how to deal with overfitting. I'll let you look into those. But this is the crux of what we're looking at. We've now got TensorBoard, a way to programmatically view our experiments. And you can see here that if we ran a bunch of experiments, we can start to toggle them on and off. And if we wanted to search here, so say we only wanted the test values, we can just look at the test values. And so we had multiple different runs. We only wanted the ones that went for 20 epochs. You could use 20 epochs as a way to search different things. We've got along here, this is the number of epochs our experiment went for. We've got some values there, such as how many steps it took, the time it went, and the relative time, the compute time that it took. And then one more thing I want to show you is the graphs. So this is our model here. We've got an input. Let's have a look from the input. This takes a little bit of playing around with to get used to. There's our image data, 32 by 3 by 224 by 224. There's our efficient net model. So if we open that up, we've got 3 blocks. So we've got sequential, which is the features. Then we've got adaptive average pool. And then we've got the classifier. And if we jump into this, what do we see in here? Well, there's our dropout layer. And there's our linear layer. So we've got weight, bias. It's going in there. I'm trying to scroll and look at this at the same time and talk. There's a fair bit going on. Hold Alt and scroll to zoom, this is. So there's our weight and bias tensor is going into the linear layer. And then the output here is, what do we got here? We can just click on all of these nodes. And then if we really wanted to dive into, we've got this sequential. We drag this. This is what our efficient net model's made of. So we can jump in. We've got conv2D, norm activation. We've got a conv2D layer. We can see what happens inside there. We've got a batch norm 2D, and we've got a silu. So if you want to explore what these are, you can look at the structure of many different models with TensorBoard. This is how valuable of a tool it is. Not only can you view your model's training results, you can inspect your model's architecture. And of course, how could you find out anything more about what this is? So how could you find out about batch norm 2D? Well, PyTorch batch norm 2D. Here we go. There's the documentation. Applies batch normalization over a 4D input. And if you're like, what's batch normalization? Well, there's a paper there if you would like to read that, or you can go, what is batch normalization? A gentle introduction to batch normalization for deep neural networks. So this is how you can be exploratory. You can experiment, not only with training different models, but inspecting different models. So that's just a little hint at what the power of TensorBoard can offer. If you'd like to track more things with your summary writer, I'd encourage you to look at the documentation. You've got add scalar, that's a single value. Add scalars, we've seen that one, we've used that one. We've got add image if you wanted to track some images. We've got add images. Add figure, add video, add audio, add text. There's a whole bunch of different things you can try out. But that is enough for now. And I think my browser's a bit all over the shop here. We've viewed the experiments of one model, which is our model up here, this one. But how would we view multiple experiments? So let's tackle that in the next video. We'll alter the train function to take in a writer parameter so that we can update our writer class on the fly. Let's see how to do that in the next video.